Hi, Margaret. Um,
So I'm sitting at Garden House at Wolf Creek.
yeah, yeah, and I asked you before, and now I want to make a short film. What is it to be a fairy? Because you were from the very beginning, from the second gathering.
Yeah, almost from the beginning. Oh gosh, what is it to be a fairy? I mean, everyone puts different words to it. Um, I mean, in a way, fairy was a counterculture, a reaction against the sort of assimilationist, commercial, bar-centered culture that was presented us.
Hmm.
Um, but also, it was people discovering each other and finding that there was this whole group of us. I used to call it a tribe, but that ends up having some meanings that aren't what I want. But we found that a lot of us had this strong bond, and share values and an attitude that are not dominant in mainstream culture,
Hmm.
and that aren't all that visible in the the gay world
Yeah.
in general. Um, I mean, fairy, yeah, how to define.
What do you think is the main thing that it's the most important that this movement is carry?
I think one of the key pieces is heart circle. Um, it's not something that's unique to us, but it's also not real common that sort of the core of gatherings is for us to get together and really hear each other's stories and, always discover our own story being told by all these other people.
Yeah.
And there's such a deep healing that happens in that, both to be witnessed and to witness. Um, I think it's been the most transformative gatherings in general, and heart circles in particular. I think have been the most transforming element in my life,
Yeah.
and I think it's been that way for very many of us. And that creates a sort of emotional depth.
Yeah.
Um, even if I've only been to one gathering with someone, if I've heard them in heart circle, it's created a bond there.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's about bonding between gay people.
yeah, I think our community
Emotional bonding.
Yeah, our community emphasizes emotional bonding and emotional openness um, in a way that especially, gay men in general maybe
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
Um, there's a high level of affection at gatherings, both touching and just,
Yeah.
in general. Um,
And what is about spiritualism in the radical fairies?
yeah, I mean, there's nothing universal, but many of us found that there were strong common elements. I guess that many of us turned away from, patriarchal religion, and found ourselves much more nature connected. Um, I mean, Nominus, we formed a church, but it's explicitly not centered around any practice other than heart circle. That it's it's understood that we're all coming from our own paths.
Hmm.
I mean, I know a fairy who's an Anglican priest, um, but most of us have turned out not to be Christian and to be somewhere in the pagan or nature worshipping
Yeah.
spectrum. But I mean, there are some who were very strongly, you know, atheistic.
Yeah.
Um, but there's been a common theme, I think, of sort of a goddess worshipping, nature worshipping. Something that like 4/5 of us share. Um, yeah, it was in a way, it was such a shock at the beginning for us to discover each other because we didn't know that the others were out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's that way for many of us when we come to our first gathering. I mean, some people end up hearing all about it ahead of time, but for many, a lot of us, it's, you know, it's hard not to use the word tribe,
Yeah,
but that sense of, I found my people.
yeah.
Um,
And it did happen very quickly, no? The sense of tribe.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the already by the third national gathering, um, we were trying. People were putting together a directory with the idea that we would travel around the country and stay at each other's houses,
Mm,
and that didn't really pan out so much. But there really was a sense that we were, part of this, that
yeah.
we were, that there was a connection that we wanted to maintain, and
Mm,
and now it feels like it's this whole network of us across the world, and the continent.
mm. Do you see any difference between the first gatherings and the gatherings of the present?
Yeah. Let's see. Hmm. So many different things have changed. I mean, I think the the sort of understanding within which our community operates is different. Um, I think a lot of us came into the fairies fairly naive, and now there's more of an and there's been a lot of development in terms of what understanding there even is out there around gender
Hmm.
and culture, and a lot of us came in, with some sense of what patriarchy was, but gender queerness is something that has really shifted a lot in those decades since. Um, I mean, now we have our own sanctuary, which gives us a solidity, but also means we have adult sort of things to decide and deal with that,
Hmm.
we didn't have to when we were just making camp in the national forest. Um, with shifts in, I mean, now, most of our gatherings are open to all genders,
Yeah.
and that would have been sort of inconceivable. Short Mountain was mixed gender early on, but the fags and the dykes didn't really have that much to do with each other in the early '80s.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think any of us, so we didn't know that it would end up now where most of fairy is all genders.
Yeah.
Um, I think in a way, I think there are connections between the transliberation that's happening and the fairies of back then. I think the fairies were one of the most genderqueer places in the gay male community,
Hmm.
and so I think it's natural that that now trans fairies are finding their way here. I mean, I see a lot of echoes between them and some of the folks who I look back at, who
Hmm.
didn't get to come out as trans 30 years ago. I guess another thing that's changed is that in the first gatherings, it was just a once a year thing, and we didn't know what it would mean. Um, is this just a dream that was, we were going to wake up from, or were we going to live, 24/7, with nothing but fairy?
Yeah.
And it ended up being somewhere in between. Over time, fairy households developed, and there's cities that now have, you know, weekly or monthly fairy events.
Yeah.
Um, but most of us don't choose to spend most of our lives in fairy stuff. Our work is on the outside,
Hmm.
and this is what fairy is what we go to for rejuvenation. Maybe it's a fairy household we live in, but very few of us spend all of our
Yeah. You
lives.
you live in a house with fairies?
Yeah,
How many?
there are four of us.
For many years?
Well, I just moved there a few weeks ago.
Oh, and before that?
Before that, I was living I had been living with my elderly father and taking care of him.
Oh,
Um,
but I've
bef-
heard that a lot of fairies live together
yeah,
in the same house.
yeah, and I lived in a fairy house, and then I lived in just a collective house where I was the only fairy.
Hmm.
Um, but many fairies live in houses with others.
Yeah,
It's certainly nice to at least be plugged in with a network of. I need to live somewhere where there are fairies that I can have contact with.
yeah,
One thing I like with Portland is that every week at the coffee shop there's a what 3 hour
yeah,
period when fairies come
yeah.
through, and so you
So
know.
do you feel in a way you made a revolution in the gay life?
Well, I don't think any one group can make a revolution, um, but I think fairies have carried some change into at least the larger gay culture.
Hmm.
Um, because a lot of people would prefer how we live to how the mainstream lives.
Hmm.
Um, and in a number of places, fairies have become quite visible. I mean, for many years now, we've had our own stage at San Francisco Pride,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
we've had a
I've been
whole
there. I've been there.
we've had a whole zone that is, militantly
Yeah,
non-commercial, which is
yeah.
such
I came to San Francisco the same day of the parade.
I mean, to have a militantly non-commercial
Yeah,
space at an event that is otherwise so much about corporate sponsorship,
yeah.
and to have that year after year.
Hmm.
Um, so, I think there's just still a lot more for us. I don't think our work is done. Um,
What do you think the fairies of the present time should do?
oh, goodness. Um, well, I think Heart Circle is still something to carry out to more people,
Hmm.
to teach more people this form. Um, and I think we're still figuring out how to do things in a heart-centered way.
Hmm.
In particular, it seems like now we're sort of figuring out how do we combine like social activism and addressing ways in which oppression has creeps into our consciousness. Um, how do we do that in a subject
Hmm.
heartfelt way?
Yeah,
Um, there aren't a lot of models for that in the outside world, and our our community is I think making progress in that. Um,
can you say something to the fairies of Israel? Because I'm going to show them.
well, I'm excited to hear that there are a lot of you. I really wish for you, to get to go to a gathering, and you know, um, yeah, much love from North America and the Pacific Northwest. Um, goodness knows if I'll ever get to visit your homeland and gathering at your place, but a fairy gathering is sort of the same anywhere.
Yeah, but you can see that you were one of the members of the first gatherings of the fairies, and now it's all over the world.
Yeah,
You must feel proud, no? That you were part of this revolution.
lucky,
Yeah, it's lucky.
lucky.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's well, I guess many of us have been attracted to it because it's important.
yeah,
it's one of the antidotes to the poison that we live in. And I really believe in it. And that's why I try to help out Wolf Creek in what ways I can.
Mm.
That it just feels like such an important. I mean, my hope and dream is that the radical fairies can be one little spark in one of the hundreds or thousands of flames that together make the turning that we're part of. And to get to be part of that is really exciting.
Yeah, thank you.